I guess. Well, it's not going to show me there. All right, hold on. Let me just find it. Hello, folks. Sorry, just getting started here. Hold on. Okay. All right. Hello. How's everybody doing?
Hey, y'all.
All right. What does it say? 2 are watching. Okay, so I guess we're live. So, hello, everybody. How you doing? We're here today on the Doctor Who channel. Jamie and I are going to be talking about the cases here. We're going to be talking about stuff. We're going to be talking about Cuss Road. We're going to be talking about Brendan's clemency. And we're going to be talking a little bit about the $50 million bullet and why we think that is very important to help further showcase the kind of shady doings that go on there in rural Wisconsin. And we think, it's important to put our support behind this new docudrama. So we're going to be talking about all these things. But if you're seeing this on my Doctor Who channel, you're going to be seeing it as the OG broadcast where it's just Jamie and I talking. However, if you are seeing this on my Making a Murderer channel, you will be having the added benefit of certain clips being inserted at certain points to kind of illustrate what it is we were talking about. So just so everybody knows that right off the bat, we're here with Jamie, Sam William Henry 582, as he's known on Discord. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, guys. Good. Yourself?
I'm all right. So
living the dream.
Started streaming. Okay, so it looks like everything's working there. So obviously we're going to start out talking today about Stephen. Obviously his appeal is in effect. It's been filed. We are currently awaiting the state's response, which they just received a 90-day extension, and it is now due on, I believe, February 11th.
5th.
I believe.
Yeah, somewhere around there. The second week, I think, right around there.
I think it's the 11th because it was filed on like November 14th, or November 13th, and so anyway, or it was on the 9th, and then because of 31 days in December and 31 days in January, it would have been, or whatever. Anyway, so I don't know. Anyways, I had it all worked out in my head before, but that's irrelevant. The whole point is about 90 days, so it puts it into early February. And so that's when the state's response is going to be due to the current motion to appeal the decisions of Judge Sikowitz. And obviously there's, the things we all have been talking about, like the bones, for instance. Obviously the bones from the quarry believed to be Teresa's have been given back to the Hall box. And the state did that without telling anybody, without, They basically didn't want anybody to know about it. They were trying to do it under the radar. Didn't turn over the paperwork that showed what they were doing. They hello DSP. They tried to fly it under the radar and didn't want to tell anybody about it. Didn't tell anybody what they were doing. Now that they're being called out on it, their excuse is they didn't violate statute and Stephen's due process because they gave the grieving family animal bones, that it was just animal bones. Well, why? And all the questions that raises, right, folks?
That should actually make the Hall box pretty PO'd right there.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing, But obviously, they probably went over and prepped the Hall box and said, "Hey, look, we're going to say this because we want to keep that bastard in jail. We know he did this." Their line. Right?
Yeah.
And most likely the Hall box went along with it. They're a grieving family. They don't want to believe that they were screwed over by the people they trusted. It's just not in their, whatever. It's just not like what they're about. How's it going, Millbilly? Hello, buddy. So
to me, it's a double-edged sword that they're walking on there. They're trying to keep them happy, but also trying to dodge that part as well, so to speak.
Right. Just like they did with Penny Burnson back in the day.
Yep.
Keep telling her, no, you're fine. No, we got the right guy. You're fine. No, yeah, no. It's she's getting these phone calls from Gregory Allen. He's breathing at her and saying disturbing things to her, and she's like telling them, "Look, I don't think you guys got the right guy because he's still calling me and all that." And they're just like, "No, no." And I mean, and then what happens when we find out in the end? She was absolutely right. They didn't give a flip about her. They were bulls. They were BSing her, even and letting her remain at in danger.
Yep. They try to make it sound, with Steven's case now, they try to make it sound like they're so like they don't make mistakes. His last case is that you make mistakes in discovery in a crime.
Right. And it shows their track record of how they try to deal with things, when
Yep.
when they decided somebody's guilty. They can't prove it, It's like you hear Peterson, when Peterson, you hear Alan talk about Peterson saying about Steven, I don't care if you did this, I'm gonna get you for it. And it's just like, what? And that was about the Penny Burnson thing. But I mean, when you see that kind of mentality and you see that kind of fortitude, towards such a unwholesome desire that Peterson had, he didn't care about justice. He had a vendetta. He was in for Steven. So
if you look at many cases, I mean, you could see this. You see this in TV as well, that they really kind of, there's many shows where their episodes are about the fact that there is corruption. There is that, hey, we got our guy because it's the guy we want, and that's what's happened here.
Sorry. Yeah, the whole 85 thing shows just how easily that those agents in that area go down the wrong path. Okay.
Yep.
And basically don't learn because they basically went and made a lot of the same damn mistakes again.
Yep. Even if he had alibis like we know he did the first time, 20-ish people had seen him there helping pour concrete, but yet that wasn't good enough for him.
Exactly. That's one of the very good points right there. It's like that many people were his alibis. And the same testimony that Steven's lawyer in the trial had tried to use to undermine Penny's, description in the hospital afterwards, where she had officers possibly, obviously suggesting things to her, as we know from statements made to DCI agents, that they did say things like, "Oh, that sounds like Stephen Avery," and it's obvious Gene Cush looked at a picture of Stephen Avery before he drew his sketch. It's obvious because it was from several months previous, and Stephen had this like really curly, like look almost like he had a freaking perm with this like curly hair, and at the time he had this longer, really straight looking hair and looked totally different. So I mean, it's obvious that he was looking at a mugshot, and it's like, so when you see these things, and it's like, and they're trying to tell me it's all on the up and up now. That with Teresa Halbach, it was all that time it was all, well, then why are you making some stupid dumb mistakes over and over? Look, a tweet I saw today by AC Rookie where he was pointing out some of the things that Wiegert and Fassbender were saying to Jody in an interview or whatever, where they were just basically again and again suggesting over and over the motive or suggesting the sequence of events, basically, or various events to her and putting it to her. And like, basically they are constructing in the interrogations and the interviews they do, they are constantly suggesting the narrative. And it's like, and so I responded to him by saying, they are constantly doing that. And we all know that that's not the right technique, but yet they continued to rely on it. And then, and I finished off the tweet by saying, Brendan was their dream come true at the expense of souls, because that's exactly what it was. I mean, they had to sell their souls essentially to be able to do that to an innocent 16-year-old kid. You know,
it's almost like when they went to the training for the read technique that they skipped out halfway through it, and we're like, "Oh, let's go get something to eat instead." it was done, for lack of better words, it was done very half-assed, in my opinion. And going back to the extension for the court, the good thing about that, in my opinion, is that they're not just writing it off and trying to send just a BS. They could have. At least they're taking a little bit of time and hopefully reading through everything that Kathleen has got put in there.
Yeah, I think me personally, I think the judges are already taking aspects of it seriously. I think they were very much, I think, possibly offended by some of the arguments that the state, attorneys made when Kathleen Zellner raised the issue of the bones and how it was a due process violation. Stephen had not been informed of it and all these things, and their answer was, oh, well, he's procedurally barred from all these things. He's procedurally barred. That was basically their whole argument. They just figured, we'll just say he's procedurally barred. I mean, the Court of Appeals made it pretty darn clear that they found that they were not amused, with that. And you know what I mean? So and I think they showed that a little bit. So yeah, I think there's going to be certain issues here that have gotten their attention that I think we're finally going to get an evidentiary hearing. I mean, not on every single issue, maybe, but maybe on 2 or 3, we might get back into an evidentiary hearing and therefore into court, where KZ will possibly be able to get some of these guys on the stand, particularly Ken Kratz, since he's already admitted to knowing what was on the Veely CD. He has negated the need for Veely because of documentation that has been created during this case, so she can question him about it and other things. Yep. It's like that whole deal makes him, he's going to end up on the stand most likely. So it's going to be
it really brings in his statement that he made that there was nothing of evidentiary value in there. Right. According to who? Just his own opinion. I mean, if you look at anybody that, and granted, yes, we've got some lawyers and in that profession that are in the community, but just about anybody that read that and heard that, is you're looking at this thinking, how is that not of it? I mean, how do you look at that and say, no, that doesn't, that proves nothing, and if you look at the interview with AC Rookie, he states there, so what about the CD? He doesn't care because, as he said, tunnel vision, that's exactly what he had.
Right.
Got our man.
Absolutely. What's up there, Travis? What's up, buddy? How you doing? So, yeah, it's, it's wild. I mean, but I do think that there's a couple of issues here that are going to land that'll get some traction, I think. And I believe the entire the entire addition she's made to the record is also opening the door for further things, because as she processes other things, new things, brand new things, and that sort of stuff that show, that the evidence isn't really what it seems like she's been doing. For instance, the bullet having bits of wood particles and paint particles. Okay, that sort of stuff. When she comes up with more things like that, you know what I mean? It's, it's more than interesting to me that, and she also thinks so. I'm sorry, just let me say one thing. And she also thinks so because she points it out immediately in the first thing in her brief about how the first denial of the emotion for post-conviction relief was just completely like not right, because even the state believed an evidentiary hearing was coming because they were making arrangements with her to let her get at the RAV, to let her get at more of the evidence, and they were doing it all in the spirit. Even the prosecutors are saying that it was all being done in the spirit of Judge Willis's original order and his order to preserve evidence and so that whatever. And so she's talking about how both sides were in agreement on that, and that both sides thought this was going to an evidentiary hearing because this clearly the evidence was much weightier than it had been in the previous hearing that had been granted by Judge Willis. That even the prosecution realized that the amount of proof being brought to the table here was greater and wasn't just accumulative
validity.
Okay, exactly. And so that part right there is to me extremely fascinating, because that's a huge point. Even the agents of the state thought it was headed toward an evidentiary hearing, judging because, like I said, Willis had granted one in the past, and clearly this time the amount of evidence being brought was greater. So yeah, it's amazing though. But yeah. And obviously there's so many problems we have, obviously. So no problem if it comes back to you. But I was just going to go into the fact that we know that these bones that they gave back were scattered all over the quarries. You know, that was why they didn't want to connect those bones to Teresa at trial. They knew if they connected those bones to Teresa at trial, the jury would have believed the planting defense. I think that's the way that their wheels were spinning. That if they connected those quarry bones to Teresa, that the jury would believe in the planting defense. And I think that's why they worked so hard and so desperately. I'm not going to spend 20 seconds on those bones, all that stuff, right? That's all because they were afraid of it. They were afraid of it. So that makes them so important. And then you find out that all before trial, they all believed they were Teresa's. Even Leslie Eisenberg believed they were Teresa's. Suddenly, right before trial, Leslie Eisenberg's talking about how, she can't say she's unsure. She can't say they're Teresa's. And that's the line, right? And then we know that very soon after trial that, that it was back to, they believed they're Teresa's because in 2011, they gave them back to the Hall box. Or back to the funeral home that did the whatever for the Hall box. So it's like, we know that they believed it before, they believed it after, but right around trial, they decided that it was going to be very unclear what those bones were. I mean, to me, that's not an accident.
That was a CYA move. If they said definitively that, yes, they were, they have to stand by that. Her saying that she cannot, that yes, they are, was just to cover your own.
Right. So is Travis still there? But
I believe so.
Anyways, I thought you were going to continue talking while I poured my Dr. Pepper. So I guess I'll finish pouring this real quick here. And but hopefully Travis is going to get to work on preparing his legal points so that we can cover the motion. Oh, there he is. So that we can cover the motion for everybody. So maybe we can do that tomorrow, even if maybe you and I and Julie. Okay. If you want, we'll see if Julie's available in the morning and we'll get together. But maybe we can do that tomorrow night, because I know everybody wants to hear your kind of point of view from the legal side. So
yeah, that'd be
real
pretty
sugar
cool.
Is good. I've had a few of those recently. I even have a video I posted for friend of the channel, Sharon Sunshine Young over there, Glaswegian over in Scotland. And so yeah, that stuff is good. Yes, Travis. Anyways, sorry. So getting back on point, I don't know what you're question marking, Travis. You don't remember the motion video? Anyways, moving on. So other is that the fact that you have these bones scattered across the quarry, and that clearly the state even thinks were Teresa's. And then you have all the activity over on Cuss Road. It's been a big deal to everybody recently, by the way. Mill Billy, who's over in the chat here, has been doing a lot of videos and a lot of stuff about this and posting the pictures and doing a lot of discussion and showing in documents, officers talking about things. And so they're really drawing together some connections, along with Rubber Ducky's also been doing some videos about this. So, but it's yeah. I don't know all the stuff yet.
Millbilly's been doing a lot of the calls as well.
Yeah, and into the calls he's been posting a lot of the calls and things like that are very interesting. So check Millbilly's channel out. But people have been listening to these calls, and there's, like I said, like I was just saying, are starting to make some connections and some interesting connections. And so I leave it to people to start checking them out and see what they think. There's a lot of activity on Cuss Road, and to me that's never been that's always seemed interesting, because why was there so much activity? Then we hear about things like Leo R claiming that he thinks Halbach came to his door that night. And then you got some of the photos that are circulating right now where there's just so much going on there. And we know that the deer camp was
the big thing is
one night and like completely taped off so that nobody could get at it around this time. And it's just, when you put all this stuff together and all this attention and focus that's going on over there, and it's like nothing to see here, and yet everything and all the dogs are going off of Avery Salvage Yard and into the quarries and over by Custer, and it's like you get the feeling of, what really happened here? Something happened over there, but it got moved. It's obvious.
Cuss Road photos that have just come out are the clarity on them is it's some of the best that we've actually seen out there. You can zoom in and you can, stuff still does get blurry, but you can get a little bit better picture of some of this. A lot of people are looking at what's going on with those. It actually looks, in one of them, it's hard to tell if it's a fire or if it's some of the gas or the bowered lights that are off in the trees. And I see a picture where I've zoomed in so as close as I could, and it almost looks like the guy has got a gas can with him. That's speculation. It looks like it could be. We can't pinpoint it for sure. But all that activity on all the people there on that day, what all are they looking for? There's a few different burn pile spots when you look at those videos. It looks like somebody was actually kind of
yeah, right.
So yeah, there's about three burn piles there.
There was 3 in Manitowoc County gravel pit, and little pile of cremains.
Yep. And if you're looking at, there were 3 separate burn areas. So which one was Ertl talking about? They've got 2 different zones that they have cordoned off with caution tape.
Right. Well, they brought him over for what?
It was more. It's more than.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yep. When you look at
they've got what Bushman called a spot of strange earth. So that's what.
Which is basically his way of. Yeah, basically his way of
indicating
saying
he thought it was a
disturbed
marriage
soil
site
for whatever reason.
or yeah, right. That he thought it might be connected to Teresa, right?
You know,
But it's
and
Bushman,
then
folks.
again,
Those of you who don't know who Bushman is, Michael Bushman was part of the original arrest party. He was a good friend of Peterson, and he was part of the original arrest party of Stephen Avery in 1985. So that's who Michael Bushman is. And he's there again in the Teresa Halbach investigation. Conflict of interest don't mean anything in this case. I mean, it's like they didn't just use the existing Manitowoc County sheriffs. They even brought some out of retirement with a conflict of interest. You know, so it's, yeah, just another interesting little tidbit.
yeah, and that's suspicious that in itself. You don't have enough people on your department to cover this where you need to for a couple of days. Was he out, or was it just one day?
He was, I think it was a weekend, and I think he was, yeah, I don't know. They called him a volunteer and all that, but it's just like then he ends up insisting on bringing focus on this spot that I think it was Remaker had signed off was not worthy of further look, but I guess Bushman pressed the issue, and then another officer okayed them to get Ertl over there and digging it up, and I don't know. Anyway, that's the way, I think that's the way I remember it. I did a video about it, but it was like one of my first 20 videos, or I think it was one of my first 10 videos. So I'm, a little bit getting a little. I got to go back and watch it anyway.
And now looking in chat, like Millbilly said that they turned the dogs away from Cuss Road for what? The dogs don't lie, and that's what they didn't want is the dogs to be recorded as that they did find something there right away.
Right. Oh, and Rhonda South brings up, yeah, they let officers that were on the original arrest party for Stephen Avery back in 1985 be part of it, but the coroner, who is the only office at Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that didn't have any prior conflict of interest with Stephen Avery, is the only part of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that is barred from the investigation and from Avery salvage. So just let that sit with you. and the prosecution claims, well, what do they need a coroner for? Well, that coroner was bringing a forensic anthropologist, something that no one else ever brought to Avery Salvage Yard for Teresa.
Yep.
Didn't happen. But the Manitowoc County coroner was ready to bring one. She had her thinking cap on. She was prepared. Getting prepared.
Just like Cuss Road is an extremely important part of what went on, so was the coroner, and I think they did. They knew that would be the one thing that could probably link or tie everything the way they didn't want it to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, that's just it. It's like I said, they didn't want the jury to know about those bones in the quarry. And they certainly didn't want the jury connecting those bones to Teresa. They certainly didn't want that, because I think at that point, it makes it just a tiny little step to just go along with the planting defense. Because once they realize that there's such a tiny amount in Stephen Avery's burn pit, and that there's a whole bunch of, it's just, it would have changed their whole perspective on it. And we already know that when they originally went in, there was a vote, and it was, kind of favoring Stephen. And then a bunch of things happened.
Well, look at the trial.
It swung back the other way. So
maybe if they look at the trial where Ken has her removed.
What were removed?
Ken having Kakich removed from the trial. I
Right.
mean,
Oh, right.
for and claiming what disgruntled employees. They tried hard to make sure any of those pieces that could really tie things together, which would have been her, even though she wasn't able to go see that. She was going to testify. At least what I think
Right.
is well, and we've seen part of that in MAM2. She was going to testify that she was ordered not to go there, and she was. Who says they're going to arrest for doing their freaking job?
Right.
It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
That's
exactly.
Bullying.
Especially when you look at the circumstances of it, where yeah. So yeah, I mean, Cuss Road is of extreme interest. Obviously, Kathleen Zellner, he believes it is. She's done her little drive time video of how she believes Teresa left and what kind of went down. That's and all the activity we see over there on Cuss Road kind of lends some credibility to that theory. I mean, I tell you what, I mean, all the pictures I'm seeing, so many emergency vehicles, so many, it's like, what was going on over there? That's a hell of a lot of stuff going on for nothing to see here. I mean,
sure.
Yeah. So,
yeah.
All right. So moving on from Stephen, we're going to move into, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's triggered a lot of people that are researching this to just and get a better understanding as best we can of what was going on there. Nothing definitive. I think with time being able to batch call and some of the radio conversation to that it is probably the biggest thing to, I guess, just kind of close that down.
Yeah. Well, well, I believe there's something there. And I mean, like I said, for me, it's enough that the dogs are leaving Avery Salvage and heading that direction, basically, right? And then you see all the attention. You see, I mean, for me, that's what it was that convinced me Stephen was ultimately innocent when I wasn't sure at first. I'm like, no, again and again and again, I look for something in this investigation that's just done by the book and somehow implicates Stephen, so that there's something that you can look at and trust. But it's not. Everything looks doctored. Every freaking thing in this case looks doctored and messed with or tampered with or lied about or just like on and on and on the list goes. So that's what I ultimately ended up thinking, with all of where these dogs were whose noses aren't going to lie, are showing where the interest was and just a lot of things like that. I ultimately just came to the conclusion that, Manitowoc County acted again, probably a small number of very small number, working probably by intimidating certain other people. And I'm not going to start naming names, but possibly intimidating certain other people, to help them. And, so, cause it's just, that's the way it seems, the way it is, certain people ending up with day planners they shouldn't have had. And, just so much stuff. It's just beyond. Certain people that live with Teresa who claim she never ever spent more than a night away from home, especially not without saying something, says nothing for 3 days. I think it was, or So anyway, you just got all these little issues like that, and and then like Paul pointing out, Mike Hallbach's very odd statement about, when Teresa was just missing, he says he makes a comment about the grieving process could take days or weeks or months. Besides the obvious problem with, you think the grieving process could take days for your sister? Interesting. That's obviously right on the surface, but moving past that, it's like, wait, dude, your sister hasn't been declared dead. She's missing. Aren't you hoping that she's going to be turning up alive until you have proof otherwise?
Yeah.
At least that early on? You know,
I'm not even extremely close with my sister, but if something was to happen to her, I mean, yeah, that would be Dale. It's family.
Right. Right. Sorry. So, okay. So moving on from Stephen, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Brendan now. Obviously, we know that Brendan's lawyers have petitioned Governor Evers for executive clemency to grant Brendan a pardon. And hopefully that will be able to get Brendan out. And from what I understand, he wants to get into doing online gaming. I think that with his following and the people that care about Brendan, he will be able to build up a nice following that will want to watch him game online. I think he will be able to support himself probably very well. And I'm actually very, very excited for Brendan's future if he does get out. But how long are we going to have to wait for that? That's the big question. And hopefully Governor Evers will see the merits of Brendan's case, and he will see the sheer amount of people who are screaming at what an injustice it is, and hopefully with his interest in education and youth and those being the things that he ran on that were the most important issues for him, hopefully he will see the merits in Brendan's case, and he will make the exception of acting in this case when governors are notoriously known not to. It's always just easier for them to leave it alone.
You know, it was pretty strong. The news release that Laura and Steve had done there, I believe it was in Illinois, with all the professionals that they had there speaking about number one, about the confession and how blatantly obvious it is that it was coerced. They fed him everything.
Right.
Also speaking on his whole abilities back then as a 16-year-old kid. They pointed it out, and they were all very articulate and made sure they drove it home. Honestly, they made sure that it was just blatant about everything involving Brendan's interrogation. There, we all hopefully Evers watched that news footage and that meeting and really put some thought into it, because he should be acting on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, we've even had a law professor at the University of Wisconsin School of Law who got together with a speech language pathologist, and they did their paper of an under the hood look at the interrogation of Brendan Dassey, and they point out how the interrogators didn't follow the proper technique. They asked way too many yes or no questions and very little open-ended questions, and even asked a lot of multiple choice questions. These kinds of yes or no and multiple choice questions allow interrogators to convey a lot of information that they may be expecting to hear to the person. And we know how Brendan is. He was basically trying to please them. They were authority figures, and he was trying to please them and appease them. He was helpless. He did not have the tools to fend for himself in that situation. Okay, they took advantage of him. I mean, and
what
and
normal
and most of us
learning
know
capability.
That. Right.
Any kid with a normal kid in that learning capability
is going to be hard pressed in that situation. Absolutely, I agree. Yeah. So the fact that Wiegert has to tell him that she was shot in the head. The one thing that if Brendan would have said it on his own, would have made the confession. All of our talk about it would be moot. You understand?
Yep.
If Brendan had said that if Brendan had said that at some point during the confession without Wiegert having to come out and say it the way he did, it would have made the confession believable. But because Wiegert got impatient, or because he was realizing that Brendan didn't know a damn thing, and that the only way they were going to get him to say it was if he just suggested it to him, right? You know, I mean, it's like, I don't understand how the courts aren't looking at that. How everything Brendan said was suggested to him. You know, stupid Hamilton came back with, well, Brendan said she was stabbed and raped. Yeah, you can't even prove that those things happened, Judge Hamilton. There's no factual evidence to prove that they happened. Brendan just said it. One of the things he was guessing at when the investigators were suggesting things and trying to get him to tell them what happened after they had been suggesting. And because he didn't know all the answers, he was guessing, and he said things that can't be corroborated. So how are you going to use that as proof that the fact that 99% of what he said was fed to him? I mean, that's a problem. And how judges like Sykes, Hamilton, Easterbrook, and Kane can miss that is just, shocking. And hopefully Governor Evers will set it right.
It makes you fearful going in front of those judges if they can't see this for any of their future cared. If I knew anything about this or saw that confession and see their reaction to it, I would not want to go in front of that judge for anything. A parking ticket.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, and then look at while we're talking about Brendan, look at Len Kaczynski. Okay? Look at that situation. Okay? Because this is the overall tapestry of what I see as the problem in Wisconsin there. Okay? And it's obvious. It keeps showing itself. And they're just hoping that the people there in Wisconsin aren't going to put it together. And I can tell you, I think I see proof of that as well. But we'll get to that when we talk about Eagle Nation and Michael Funk.
I really have a huge problem with Kaczynski.
He was harassing that clerk. What?
Here's my biggest problem with Len is he was a bag. This is a guy that has been he did I can't remember how many years, but I believe he was a major when he retired. Might have been lieutenant colonel. And obviously integrity in the military, it's also supposed to be a really crucial part of law enforcement and our judicial system. You've got a guy that did 20 plus years as a JAG, and it makes me wonder how many people he did this to that were, or when he was defending them, if that's what he did when he was in. I don't know if he did defense or not, but I'm former military, whole family is. And I look at that and it really angers me.
Yeah. It is disturbing that the way it looked like he was using this fitness regimen thing to force her to be around him. And it was really odd to me. He called it Judge K challenge runs and things. Anyways, here's my point though. He was really creepy and was being very inappropriate with his clerk. Most of you have all heard about how he sat there for 45 minutes meowing at her, and then he says no, he wasn't meowing at her. He had a little cat toy. that he was meowing, and it's like, okay, that's so much better. That's so not creepy, not. Anyway, so he gets convicted of violating a restraining order of the court and all that stuff by a jury, and it requires a 6 month.
Shop for jury.
Alexa, no.
All right.
No. Jeez. So, he's convicted by a jury, and he basically gets let off. It stayed. It's, you know, they just let it go, and they're already lining up public defender cases for him. No time. And this is where you can see the tapestry here in Wisconsin. They all want to drag up every single bad thing that they can about Stephen Avery and say how all of his past conduct with women proves that he's a killer. But then here we have Len Kaczynski, who sold Brendan Dassey down the river and has now been caught harassing his clerk and was convicted by a jury, and there's no justice there. Nobody cares how he's treating women. It only matters how somebody that they want to convict treats women. Then it matters. You know, and that sort of thing. It's just like there's selective justice, but the fact that Len Kaczynski gets off scot-free and they're already lying. I mean, I think this guy was starting to lose it. And I think that's why he was starting to lose his professionalism and allowing himself to do things that went over the line with this clerk. I think he was losing his mind. I don't think this man should be given more court cases. I don't think he's playing with all of his marbles anymore. I think it's a bad idea to make him a public defender for people who might really need somebody who's going to put up an effective defense for them. That's just, sorry. I think he's losing it.
Yeah. and looking at that, you know, I mean, how has he not been disbarred for this? But again, if you look at, say, Kratz with his activity, he didn't get disbarred, right? Or not up against what was the review board for his actions, and he blamed it on, you know, he was on medications. At the time, right, when that happened, I don't think he really had any repercussions. It wasn't until when he started doing more shady stuff finally caught up with him. But it took a long time. Right. Same thing with Len. Yeah. I mean, well, it like you're saying, there's a different court that are people of power. If they're in the legal system or part of the good old boys club, that's why Len is getting off. Is maybe one, he's keeping his mouth shut about something. You know, yeah. Why else would you let this guy go back to defend it? He just got in trouble for how he treated people.
Right. I'm like, oh great. Now are we going to hear about how he was being inappropriate to, say, some kid he was defending's mom or aunt or you know, something like that or whatever? I mean, are we going to soon be having another story like that? Because I don't think this guy can control it at this point. I think he's losing his mind, and I don't think he's in control of it anymore. So, but, you know, that's just my, I guess, opinion. But,
well, I mean, could you imagine if he brings that cat toy into a new court case right there in the courtroom? I'd like to see him try that.
Meowing at the court reporter.
Exactly. Evidently, he didn't learn the first time around.
For me, it just shows that the justice there is very, very wonky, very selective, very just not. I mean, Ken Kratz got off with what he was doing. I mean, he was harassing victims of domestic violence who were afraid they would drop his case, you know, if they denied his advances. I mean, that's horrible. And that was just like a slap on the wrist. You know, okay. And then eventually it got a little too embarrassing, so he had to step down from, all of his little, crime victims' rights board. Then eventually as DA in Calumet County, because he had violated a trust, and the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association was pissed at him. They're like, those women gave us that information to help them. They trusted us. You violated that trust, you freaking moron. Well, they're like, and they're making the argument. It's like, they're like, this could damage the possibility that victims will be willing to give us this information to help them in the future. That's what you've done. That's the damage you've done. And they're trying to tell that to him in this letter that they're writing. And I'm sure he didn't give a crap. I'm sure it just went right on deaf ears, because I don't believe he feels one bit of remorse personally. So
definitely brings a lack of confidence in him as a DA or assistant DA even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, not only that, but like I said, the Wisconsin District Attorneys Association was pissed off at him that he had used the contact information for those ladies the way that he had done for his own personal gain, because he was seeking sexual gratification. And they were pissed. They were like, you violated that trust with those ladies. They can pass that along to other people, and other women may be reluctant to give us that information to help them in the future. They're trying to tell him exactly the damage he's done, because obviously they felt he wasn't getting it. Right. So, and that doesn't surprise me, because I've seen Ken Kratz talk. He'll never think he did anything wrong. Hardly ever. So, anyway.
Nope, he's a saint.
So we're hoping Brendan gets his clemency, gets a pardon. Like I said, I feel if Brendan gets out, I feel good for him. I believe he's going to immediately get into online gaming. He's going to get onto streaming. We're going to all be able to get whatever game he's playing, and we're going to be able to go online and play with him when he's streaming. We're going to all be able to, all of his supporters are going to be able to support him. And, being Brendan Dassey, he's probably going to be able to do well at online gaming. And I'm glad, because that's something that's going to be something he'll be interested in. He'll be able to make a living. He won't have to worry about money. And so he'll be able to stay out of trouble, because he'll have something to do to occupy his time and basically be his job. And it'll be something he loves. And I think it'll be cool, because everybody else will be able to interact with him online through it, even when he gets out. So I do hope he gets out. I feel there's some promise for his future even when he does get out. So I feel good about all that, and so I hope it happens. Moving to talk about, I was talking about the Len Kaczynski thing right now. Guess what, folks? He comes from a little place called Fox Crossing. This is right near a little place called Neenah, Wisconsin. Okay, and in Neenah, Wisconsin, in 2015, a hostage escaped a hostage situation at Eagle Nation Cycles. Sorry, and was shot by police officers while trying to escape the gunman, essentially. It's a tragic situation, but there's all kinds of sticky circumstances all around it. There's going to be a docudrama being made over the next year with a projected release date of early December, in particular December 5th of 2020, because that's the anniversary of Michael Funk's death. So they're shooting for that to be the release date. And I think we all need to put our support behind it, as well as we do with Brendan and Steven, because it shows more of the just BS that goes on there. These small town sheriff's departments and things like that are just getting away with things that I think are just shocking. This docudrama is going to tell the story of what happened at Eagle Nation. It's going to go through 2012, and it's going to show what happened in 2012. Okay, they raided Eagle Nation Cycles with, I mean, it was like a severe drug raid. Okay, they found nothing. Okay, they found nothing except a little tiny piece of marijuana, and that tiny, tiny little piece of marijuana shows up after 20 seconds of missing footage in the surveillance video. Okay, there's 20 missing seconds. Suddenly, then an officer comes into the room with a dog, and the dog ends up hitting on this little bag, this like little file bag or whatever, and it ends up like hitting on that. But this happens after 20 seconds of missing footage, and the only reason that footage is missing is because the Neenah Police Department confiscated Eagle Nation Cycles video footage when they raided it. And when they gave it back, that 20 seconds was missing, and suddenly there was a little tiny little piece of marijuana in a bag in the owner's office. And that's all they found. So you have these very odd things going on. So for those of you watching this on the Making a Murderer channel, you will now see the clip with the missing 20 seconds. Okay. So you have that oddity, you know. You have, you know, also the, you know, you move on from 2012 to 2015. Now you have this crazy dude, Brian Fladoff, who found out that his bike was down at Eagle Nation Cycles. It had been taken there. Well, it wasn't his bike anymore. He had sold it, but he somehow decided he sold it for bail money. But he decided now that he was out of jail, well, he didn't like that, and he was going to go get his bike back. So he took hostages, and that's how he was going to get his bike back. And that's how this really tragic day came to pass, you know. So there's a lot of things in this. We know that Hoffer claims that he couldn't tell it was Michael Funk, but here I can show you right now a clip that is 3 months before Hoffer eventually shoots Michael Funk, where they are face to face. So I'll show you that clip here, for those that are on my Making a Murderer channel. And so, you know, there's a lot of things that are just odd about it. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, some of the worst bits of it are when you think about what happened afterwards. Because the folks at Eagle Nation Cycles were left with their friend had been killed. The hostages were basically treated like suspects in some kind of a crime. And to this day, never received any kind of grief counseling or anything at all. But what the city of Neenah did was turn around and gave out rewards or awards to like all the officers involved for their job that day of killing a hostage. And so it's like, for me, it's like the victims are the most important thing. And the victims here were the hostages. They were the victims. They were the ones being held hostage by a gunman. Right? Any disagreement? Well, I mean, any arguments there?
No, none.
That the hostages, the hostages are the victims in this? So it's shocking to me that there was no attempt to try to help console them or anything. They were basically treated rather shabbily and like they were suspects in some kind of a crime, rather than being treated like victims of a crime. And on top of that, their friend was dead. And I know I had Ryan Moderson, and I had Michael Peterson on my channel, and Ryan was really close to Michael. It was like he was like a father to him, kind of, or close on the level of a father figure, and it really tore him up to lose Michael Funk. And those guys are still raw to this day. Sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Ever since you'd first brought this case up, one of the biggest problems that I ever had with it was the officer that shot him almost seemed talked about that in the past, and any real good law enforcement is never going to be excited that they had shot somebody. To me, it labels him as, or not, makes him such a shady person to me, that he was excited that he shot somebody.
He was that happy to have taken a human life. Yeah, I agree. I've always described it as he looks like he's about to dance a jig, you know. So yeah, I do find that disturbing about Hoffer. But then you move on to one of the next most disturbing points, and that is the fact that in the aftermath of this, Hoffer and then other officers with Neenah PD eventually said in the media that they had warned Michael Funk to drop the gun. And that's what their initial story was. When the public was paying attention, when this had just happened and the public was all paying attention, that's what they were saying, that they had warned him. Right? But they didn't. They never did that. Hoffer never did that. And then later on, when the court cases started heating up, I guess, the press started to realize that there was video out there that proved that that wasn't true. And so suddenly then Neenah PD is walking those statements back. But by that point, the public isn't paying attention on the level that they were in the opening week after this tragedy. Okay? So it's like there was a lie told immediately to placate the local population, and it got walked back at a later date when nobody was really paying attention, or a lot fewer people were paying attention. So I don't know. That's another part of this. That is a concrete reality of what happened here. And it's like I said, we know that Hoffer was hit in the helmet, and David Starr has proven that it was by flat off. Okay? We know he was hit in the helmet. The moment he was hit in the helmet, he should not have been allowed into this situation. There should be some kind of rule or statute or whatever it takes to make it illegal for any officer who has been hit, whether it's in a helmet, whether it's in the arm, leg, whatever, for them to remain in a situation like this. It should be illegal for them to do that. I don't give a damn about any 5-second window and what happened in that, or 2-second window and what happened in that 2-second window. That is all, to me, moot if they've been hit by a bullet in any way. I don't care about that, the whole criteria of the 2-second window, 5-second window, whatever it is, because if they've been hit, they should be out. That's it. There's no other, I don't believe in any other option at that point. And hopefully people in Wisconsin will look at this situation and will start to develop a similar opinion to me. Because I believe Hoffer should have been taken out of the game the moment he was compromised by a freaking bullet. Anyways, so that's the way I feel about that. So I think people should support this thing and that. Go ahead.
I understand what you're saying, but when you're in a fight, for instance, if there's shooting going on, I mean, if somebody gets hit, they're going to continue to fight back and shoot back. That sure. Part will never go away. I mean, it's your only means of self-defense.
In the immediate moment, okay, yes, I agree with you. In other words, him firing back while they were still at the back door of Eagle Nation, okay, I would have been, yes, that makes sense. He's been hit. he wants to get away. He's making sure he's going to get away. That I can understand. But once you've already ran to safety, out of the game, and he had already run to safety.
I see what you mean. Yep.
He should have been out of the game. So, yes, I agree with you. You know, so anyways, in the immediate situation, yes, obviously, use every means you can to keep yourself safe. But, like I said, he'd been hit. Once he reaches safety, that's it. Out of the game.
Yeah.
Because they scattered and ran so quick. Michael Funk came out into that, alley, and it was a ghost town. He didn't see any officers. He didn't see anything. He was probably hoping to see one, just so he could flag him down and say, "I'm a hostage," but he didn't see him. So then he was all of a sudden going, "Oh crap!" And so he goes to hide behind the truck because he's afraid Flatoff's going to come out of that back door at any second. And while he had turned around to look at the back door, suddenly Hoffer pops out from the corner behind Michael Funk. You know.
And now was he shot in the back?
My whole thing is Hoffer claims, and he's basically right, I guess. He allowed Michael Funk to get 90 degrees to him, to where he could see basically Michael Funk's side, left side.
Okay.
And once he got to that point, he fired. At first, he claimed he offered a warning, but that isn't true. I believe if he would have offered a warning, Michael Funk's gun would have immediately hit the dirt. I believe he was looking for one of the officers when he first came out into that alley and was hoping to see one so he could flag him down. But because he didn't actually pull out his gun right away. He came out of that back door and he didn't pull out his gun right away. He waited until he got to the behind. He looked around kind of and got behind that truck, and then you start to see him reach in for his concealed weapon. Reaching for his gun wasn't his first thought. I honestly think he hoped to see one of the officers, hopefully still there somewhere, that he could flag down.
Some help.
That's my opinion, but I think it's a plausible opinion. So. Mm-hmm. So,
yeah, looking at the chat a little bit, brought up something that we had talked about before, which was the Michael Bell. And I had just read just before we started that Wisconsin started that new law where any officer involved shooting has to now have 2 outside investigators that are not tied to that department.
Right. That's Michael Bell has been getting that done. I mean, that's because of what happened to his son. And yeah, he actually got legislation passed a while back where he made it where they could no longer self-investigate. That the investigating agency had to be an outside agency. So it's interesting that you're saying that they now have to have 2. So
read that here today.
So, all right. Well, I think that's mainly what. Yeah. Oh, that's and that's like I said. I have. If you type in search on my channel, folks, Michael Bell, a couple videos will pop up. I've covered it in the past. So if you're intrigued about that, go check it out. It is totally tragic and unfortunate situation. Obviously, it's terrible, but you can go check that out. But so I think we've gone through everything here today. Be mindful to protect, to be, or to not protect, but to support this upcoming docudrama. It's focusing on telling the truth. Try not to pay attention to Travis over here. He's Travis, so he gets to have whatever his opinion is. But honestly, I think everybody should keep an eye on what's going on over here with this docudrama and what happened over at Eagle Nation Cycles in 2012 through 2015. It's very, very interesting. And whether or not this is going to all equate to something in the courts, it won't. And Travis knows that. and I think that's most of what colors his opinion, is because it's going to go nowhere in the courts. He doesn't see any real purpose to this docudrama, maybe. But I think the people in Wisconsin should know and should be able to make possibly, start something that will bring about what I'm talking about, where a compromised officer has to remove themselves once they reach safety. That's it. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's I truly believe that the people of Wisconsin and those people there in Neenah should know what happened. And I'll tell you what, before we go, I will say this. I know that Chief Olson, Aaron Olson there at Neenah PD, and I know that David Benke over at the Post Crescent, who is reporting about this, that those two gentlemen have referred to interviews with David Starr that they saw on YouTube, which would be me or Linda Kay listening, okay, because we're the only two so far that did, right? And they're referring to interviews with David Starr on YouTube, but they're not saying who we are. They're not telling people where to find us, okay? Because they don't want the locals there to find me. They certainly don't want the locals there to find my videos about all of the wonky crap that we've dug up, because they're not saying who I am in the articles. They're just saying, in an interview we saw on YouTube, they're scared to tell people where we are and how to find us, me and Linda. So, and Paul, by the way, is going to be having David Starr on this week, folks. So be keeping your eye out for that.
While you're discussing some of the other cases, what's the latest you've heard on Scott Davis's?
Scott, well, I reported on that somewhat recently. He's in a rough situation. It's, he's they're in a process right now of having to kind of regroup, and I don't know. I feel for him, but I mean, that case is such a mess. I feel that eventually something's going to click in his favor, because it's just a mess, and it's so obvious that Megan had the guilty knowledge, and it was willfully ignored by investigators, which is shocking to me, so that they could pursue this very, very circumstantial, weak case against Scott, when somebody who knows that the body's been shot while it's in a burning fire kind of makes it real easy for the jury. So you got to wonder why they didn't do that. And it's just like, it's terrible. So I do feel bad for Scott Davis, but I think they're going to regroup and they're going to come back stronger than ever. So,
Good
but,
deal.
all right. So I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Yeah, right on. I think we're going to wrap it up for tonight. I think we've covered a lot of this stuff, a lot of ground. Travis has got to sit over there and naysay me for a while. So tomorrow morning when I'm on with Sharon Sunshine Young on a different video, I'm going to be sure to talk trash about Travis while I'm talking with Sharon. And but I'm giving him a hard time because he's over there being a negative Nancy over in the chat. So, but anyways, would you like to say goodbye, Mr. Sam William Henry 582?
Yeah, thanks for having me on here tonight. Good talking over some of this stuff.
It's been a pleasure.
It was fun.
Yeah, it's been fun, man. Glad to have you. Thanks for being here. And yeah, and everybody have a good one. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe, and we'll see you.
Catch you later, everybody.